Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar where we get to sit down with Geoff McFarlane and Brian Smith of Winc. This is a really exciting organization that, honestly, I've been hoping would do a raise like this for some time. They're really terrific entrepreneurs. They've had this for a while. They've had some amazing investors partake in building this business, and they have a whole lot of traction to date. So with that, I would love to kick it off to these guys to tell us a little bit about their business, who they are, what they're up to, and then I'll hop in with questions.
Sounds great. Brian, you want to?
Great. Yeah, I can give a little background on the business. Where we are today is a little different than where we started, but I think the history sort of informs this next phase of our business. Winc was really started with the simple idea of how do you make it easier for people to discover and enjoy great wine. Not too complicated, but when we looked out in the world, and we've now been around for about 6 years, when we thought of what are the sort of modern tools to connect with tomorrow's wine drinker and today's wine drinker, we looked towards direct consumer, which was certainly emergent and popular strategy across all categories, but wine really lags outside of tasting rooms and in wine country, which most people don't have access to. And then we also look to leverage technology. And the original concept was the first the first personalized subscription e-commerce for wine. So you could show up to the site, we make recommendations based on some feedback that you gave us, and really allow you to explore wine and find great wines and learn a little bit more through the experience. What we found as that started to scale, and I should say, that initial, it was really a digital product, right? We were really just focused on creating something new for the consumer. And we started with third-party wines, other people's wines. So always been consumer focused and focused on the experience. And what we found is as the experience started to really resonate with consumers and we started to grow our audience, we found that we had an incredible feedback loop and relationship with the consumer that just hadn't existed in wine. Historically, you've had people go from the vineyard out. I make something, I send it out in the world, it hits the shelf, and the consumer comes and connects with it. We had the consumer relationship. What we didn't have was it was the wine production. And so pretty early on, we started to produce our own wines and launch those into our membership. We get almost immediate feedback. People were consuming wines and engaged with us. And that helped us sort of validate some ideas and shape wines. It also allowed us to be more innovative. And ultimately, we started to see some emerging brands and projects that we had started direct consumer really take off. They were garnering national press. They were high velocity. They had high ratings. People were talking about them through social listening. And we realized that we had what we call consumer-led brands, these brands that were thriving in the Winc ecosystem and direct consumer that had never been available on any shelf or in any restaurant. And so for the past few years, we've been developing a wholesale channel where we sell into national restaurants and retailers. We're now available in almost every state. We have over 4,000 different points of distribution, and we have a portfolio of brands that really started direct to consumer only, but are now scaling. These are brands that we started with 300 cases with our direct consumer audience that are now 40,000 plus cases. So Summer Water, Folly of the Beast are some of the brands that people might recognize. And so today, not to go on too long, sorry, but today where we find ourselves, I really feel like we built the first tech-enabled beverage alcohol company with a clear focus on wine, but we think that the future offers a lot of opportunities with that strategy.
Terrific. And would you like to add anything?
I mean, I'm sure I'll answer a bunch of other questions. He covered quite a bit there.
Awesome. No, that sounds good. So one of the things that I'm curious to hear a bit more about, I know, anytime you're a tech company and you start talking about manufacturing and, running vineyards, that could be kind of scary. It's like, wait, you're moving away from the tech play. How does this business scale? So talk to me about that decision, how you really came to that decision, and how that's impacted the business, both from a bottom line and from a growth strategy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, in today's world for consumer brands, you have to be a production company and you have to take a lot of interest in creating great products. And so, I think we look at ourselves as a modern winery that is using technology and data and the customer to help find great products. But that also means that we have to get our hands dirty, and that we have to really focus on creating great products for the customer. And so the decision was relatively easy for us. It was, if we're starting with the customer and we want to create great products, then we have to go deeper and deeper in order to make the best products for consumers. And still at our foundation is the online direct connection with customer and using technology to better serve the customer. But at the end of the day, it all starts with the customer.
From a data standpoint, what type of data do you get to collect that is informing the types of wines you make?
Can I take that? You want me? So, we're collecting data most of the data comes from the website and then our inbound interest from customers, but that allows us an incredible amount of data in comparison to a traditional wine company. So, through our website, we're getting, hundreds of thousands of visits a month, millions of visits a year, and we're able to see how customers shop. We're able to see, what different demographics across the country are ordering what, and what are the trends, what customers are liking, what customers are not liking. And so for each of the products we launch, we collect ratings data, we collect reorder data from customers, we collect geographic where we're sending those products, and we collect which demographics are consuming those products. And then in addition to that, we're able to see, what are the reorders on those products, and then and then what are sort of the referrals and how are people consuming which product and what product. But it really helps us drive the entire production roadmap and the new product creation roadmap, and then how much resources we're putting into each brand that we really find successful. It allows us to really invest in the winners because we find them.
I would just add, I think that becomes really valuable at scale. So, in our history, we're over 13 million bottles sold. So that's where it becomes really transformative, not just for our business, but for the wine industry.
So, I know one of your lines, I believe it's the Rosé, but correct me if I'm wrong, has already done like 10 million in sales in the wholesale channel. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's 10 million in sales overall. And I have to double check what's in the wholesale channel.
Yeah, no,
it's probably about 60%-ish revenue in the wholesale channel. And yeah, that's summer water. That's been our most successful product to date, and we were able to really get on the rosé trend early because of our direct connection with consumers, and then we've been able to really dive in and make the production better and better every year. So, if you take a look at the product, every single year our customer ratings have improved on that product, and that's helped us continue to grow the product. Points of distribution and the number of customers we're selling to is growing, as well as reorder rate and just overall success with that product. So it's really been a sort of like the case study that helps us prove out the product.
So, one of the things when you have a membership business and then you start to get into the wholesale channel, do you ever worry about cannibalization, and how are you kind of preventing that?
I think we look at them as pretty complementary to each other. Like really, we try to, I think each channel has its own benefits, and they serve each other equally. And so, the direct-to-consumer channel is never going to have the reach or scale that we're able to get in wholesale. And so the wholesale channel really scales brands nicely. It puts the products where the customers are. Customers are grocery shopping. Customers are, they are out, and they are, they can order on demand through Drizzly. They can, and so there's a lot of ways that we think the wholesale channel helps us scale our brands. The direct-to-consumer channel is the place where we can really connect with customers. We can really tell the stories. We can create evangelists, and we can find the products that customers are going to love. So the wholesale channel is really about scaling and telling the world about our products. So, people can find summer water in all sorts of places, and then they can come back to, they might find Winc and come back to discover other products from us. And then the direct-to-consumer channel is where we get the data and find new products to launch, as well as build marketing and evangelists for those products.
Sure.
I would just add that I think this is changing quite a bit. I think you've seen this online-offline partnership really create a lot of value for all partners involved in other verticals. So cosmetics, men's grooming like Harry's, electronics, apparel, you name it. but I think it hasn't quite happened yet in wine. But I think people are aware that the marketing that we're doing, the at-home trial, the experiential nature of what we do, is ultimately marketing and developing products that can be very successful with partners in restaurants and retailers.
I have to imagine that going to a wholesaler with all of this data to say, look how many people utilize this product, how many people enjoyed the product, all that type of stuff is super valuable. How does it change the approach to going to wholesalers from a relationship standpoint and actually getting them to agree? I have to imagine it's easier.
Yeah, it's interesting how that's developed. I think if you asked us that question when we first started the wholesale channel in 2015 or 16, we'd say it's challenging. But I think they looked at us as sort of this online disruptor that was maybe trying to take business or create a competitor to them. It took us a while to really explain to them that we look at it as a very tight partnership, and what we're doing is hugely beneficial to their business. And I think Harry's and Casper and some of the brands that have been so successful at launching into Target, Walmart, and into retail have really helped pave the way and created a case study and made it easier to tell our story. But at the same time, it's also gotten easier to just tell our story as we've sort of gone to wholesalers, taken them products that are successful and scaled those products with them as good partners. They now view us as a good partner and see the benefit in us building these evangelists online and this marketing channel online that none of their other wine companies have. And so all of that data and marketing is viewed as a huge positive today. But just 3 years ago, it was an uphill battle. So it's really developed over time, and now it's much easier.
Nice. And from if you look at a Bonobos or any of these kind of new online direct consumer retailers for clothing or whatever else it may be, they also end up opening up these flagship locations. So you have the wholesale channel. Would you also consider these flagship retail stores?
Yeah, I think, in today's world, if you're not talking about creating the best experiences for consumers, then you're not building a company that is like really focused on the customer. And so I think we see it as a huge opportunity. I think, it's just when and how, limited resources and limited overall strategy. And we feel like, the online channel is growing nicely and providing a great amount of data. And then the wholesale channel and the brand portfolio is a key focus, but an experiential physical tasting room or whatever that ends up looking like for us is absolutely something that is on our roadmap. It's just in what time frame.
Got it. Makes sense. So where, with this round of funding, with the recent round of funding that you had, where do those dollars get allocated to help kind of take the company to the next step?
Yeah, I think they get allocated in 3 areas. I think, first and foremost, as I just talked about, there's lots of opportunity for growth online. And so it allows us to expand our marketing spend. We feel like we're getting good payback on customers in roughly 6 to 9 months, depending on the channel, and then good long-term payback on those customers once the initial advertising dollars are paid for. And so that's one area we're investing in. The second area we're investing in is the wholesale channel. So it allows us to continue to build out that sales team to really build the national wholesale infrastructure that is required to really scale with the bigger retailers. And then the last area is new product launches, as well as ability to invest and acquire products that are really scaling quickly and able to take the synergies of putting them into our platform and scaling them even quicker and more profitably. And so those are the 3 key areas that we're focused on for growth. And we think that the third is the one that will really paves the way for a lot of investment over time, and the other 2 will really build out the platform that allows us to scale those products, because the long-term vision for our company is a modern portfolio of brands.
From a managing cost perspective, are you managing all of these wineries in-house for all these new product lines, or are you partnering with wineries to produce the products that you want?
I'll let Brian take that one.
Yeah, so we have our own winemaking team in-house, and we have direct relationships with some of the best growers all over California. So we are managing everything in-house. We do have partners internationally. We've chosen, over the past 6 years, we've developed some and before that in the wine business, we've developed some great relationships. with people. And so for our international wines, we're often working with partners in an area with a category that we love and really working closely with them to develop wines year on year. It's a combination of things, anywhere from, we're pulling in fruit for summer water rosé right now. Harvest is happening today, started earlier this week for us. In South America, our guys are just waiting for things to bud on the vine there. So we're involved in every aspect of production and really trying to shape the wines for our consumer.
Got it. And shifting back over to the consumer, this historically, from what I can gather, is an industry that moves pretty slow in terms of consumers being willing to adopt something new. They tend to be very traditional. So what does your consumer look like today? How do you kind of straddle that line and start to bring in more traditional wine consumers?
Yeah, I think partially that slow movement has been based on how discovery happened and sort of how customers were educated, right? So in the last 10 years ago or even today, I think for many customers, you've got multiple things at play. I think you've got buyers that you've got distributors, and buyers are sort of gatekeepers that have to be very protective of their profit margins, their bottom line, and they know customers shop in a very specific way. And typically you go into a store and customers are shopping traditional varietals from traditional vineyards, and they're shopping by what they know. So I think you've got an education problem, and then customers just not having time to really figure out what to explore next or how to explore. And so I think if you mix sort of the challenge of getting new products and then marketing new products through the traditional sales channel, and the consumer problem of navigating a very complex space and product with so many choices and a really difficult challenge in how to discover those products.
Sure.
I think you mix those two things together, and it's been very hard to launch innovative products into the space. And then as soon as someone does find an innovative product or a new trend, everyone piles on, and there's 100 new versions of that product. I think you see that in Rosé even today. But the great products and the great brands live on. I think that by having a direct connection with the customer, and it allows us really the privilege to allow customers to discover products well ahead of what they'd be able to in the traditional channels, and at a risk-free for us and the customer, giving a new chance for innovation. So I think that direct connection is really important in creating a way for customers to find it, as well as not having quite the risk that you have in the traditional sales channels through limited inventory or hard to sell, or I think you find that in a small wine shop with like hand selling, but it's very difficult to just put a random product on a store shelf and expect it to sell.
Right.
But you have customer data.
Yeah, if I can just add to that really quickly, I think we're evolving from also sort of a point system that has dominated wine for the past 20 years, and really that's shaped wine globally. And I think when we look at our audience, I mean, they're really hungry for new and exciting things and non-traditional styles, whether it's an orange wine or some variety they've never heard of. There's an appetite for that. But I think you're also, with the changing of the consumer to a younger consumer, acceptance of alternative packaging, sort of occasional drinking, like all of these things, we're starting to move from a few people scoring wines and creating success for those wines to peer review and referral and word of mouth, creating the next sort of trends in wine and creating the next products that really resonate. And so that's kind of where we live, and it's an exciting place to be.
Do you see any network effects where people are, it's kind of a viral thing where people are like, hey, you have to try this wine, and they're bringing other people into the fold as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's what we've seen with Summer Water, and we're seeing it with other brands as well. I mean, that wine was, it started with a couple of 100 cases, but the awareness and excitement and virality of that went well beyond. I think even in our second vintage, we launched a small direct consumer rosé subscription, and the amount of buzz that created that was just for Winc customers, or people could sign up for it. It was tiny. It sold out in a day, and the amount of buzz that created based on what we had done in the first vintage and the way people were interacting with the brand was well beyond the size of the brand. And I think that just doesn't happen in wine. That might happen in other consumer categories, but the typical winery is relying on tours and tasting room visits. So this is something where a small amount of actual product that really resonated with our consumer base became really amplified and evangelized through.
So curious to hear about that, because I feel like one of the challenges in the space is if you find something is really hot and it's a big deal, like you don't make wine overnight. It's a process, right? And it takes time. So how do you manage expectations around consumer demand? And then, you know, if it does kind of far exceed your expectations, can you fill in the gaps, or is it just something you have to look at as a long-term plan?
Yeah, I think there's two pieces to that. I think one, the omni-channel helps us really control that strategy. So it allows us to, you know, typically you have to really be careful about how much you're exactly going to be able to sell to the wholesale channel. By having a direct-to-consumer relationship, we can manage inventory more efficiently than a traditional wine company. So that's a piece of how helpful that is. But we do really look at it as a long-term play. I mean, I think, you know, building brands and you know, creating consumer love for products is a long-term play. And that's one of the major reasons that we feel like, you know, building a community of investors and going this Reg A route is a great way to build this company, because it allows us to really, you know, not be on a fund cycle, to really build an evangelist group of investors and focus on a 10 or 15-year vision. Certainly, you know, our goal will be to provide liquidity for investors all along that way. But instead of having a single institution that needs to trade at a single time at a large number, we can create liquidity for people when they need it, and build that community over time and really build the company over the long term.
Cool. No, that's awesome. Yeah. So what are your, from an organizational standpoint, what are kind of your, you know, 2 and 3 year roadmap plans?
Yeah. So you know, we plan to, you know, continue to invest in the 3 channels that we spoke about earlier.
Yep.
And so, you know, our goal is to create a EBITDA positive cash flow generating company over time. You know, and so it's for the next couple of years, it's investing heavily in growth. You know, we think that will look like, you know, 25 to 35% growth, depending on the sort of organic growth, and then the ability for acquisitions to speed up that growth even more. And so, and then, you know, don't have an exact timeline for exactly what an IPO looks like, but our goal is to take the company public when the numbers support a solid public offering that's going to be good for all shareholders. And so we want that to happen quickly, but, you know, making plans for what the overall macro economy is going to do, as well as sort of our ability to put together acquisitions is hard to predict. But it's certainly much, you know, we believe we're in a space that we have a tiny piece of the overall market share. We're on the cutting edge of sort of the modern consumer, the next generation of consumer. And we feel like we have a huge opportunity and road ahead of us for growth, just organically, and then everything else is gravy on top of that.
Great. So I have 2 questions in the crowd, and I have one more for you as well. So from a product line acquisition standpoint, what's your product, what's the strategy around those acquisitions? Are you looking for trends within your own user base and then using that to inform an acquisition for popular lines that you think you can accelerate the growth of? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit, I'll let Brian jump in for the second half of this answer, but I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think we're able to see a lot more trends through our channel that allow us to be a lot more informed in those acquisitions. But we're looking for great, great winemakers and founders in regions that we don't have a product that we've launched yet, or in new innovative packaging, or a customer that we don't have, that we can put into our platform, market with our customers, use our national sales team, use our production to create synergies and better margins on the product. So it's really important that we're able to get those 3 synergies, I think. Online growth, wholesale, a broader national wholesale growth, and then synergies on production and overall profitability. So those are the 3 key factors, and then a growing brand with our consumer. I think those are the major things we're looking for, and then of course, we're using all the data that we have to inform those acquisitions. But it allows us to, it takes a lot of time to build brands and to build brands that customers love. And so when we're able to pick up on some momentum that others have created and bring it into the portfolio, it allows us to sort of leapfrog those early years before you get the compounding growth that you would out of some of the acquisitions that you get.
Makes a ton of sense. So one of the questions that came in from the crowd, they want to know, would you ever consider utilizing what you built in this space to get more into different liquors and other adult beverages?
Yeah, that's absolutely part of our roadmap. I think that you're seeing, the wine and to some degree the beer industry are the farthest ahead when it comes to direct to consumer. Beer and wine both mainly from a tasting room or brew pub space. I think you're starting to see laws change and distilleries get into that space as well. But I think with the platform that we've built, we see the opportunity to get into spirits and beer, and that is on the roadmap. But wine is a $70 billion a year category in the US. We are still very small in that space, and we want to stay focused for the next couple of years. So until we have strong profitability and we feel like we're growing at a solid, we're growing at a solid pace, but growing at a solid pace along with profitability will be when we start to expand.
Got it. And the last question I have from the crowd is, over the next 6 to 12 months, what are some new varietals that they can expect to hit the shelves or online?
Yeah, great. Yeah, so we've got a pretty robust pipeline of projects that we're launching. Two that we just launched that are really exciting. One is an extension of our summer water brand, which is called Keep It Chill, and you're encouraged to do exactly that with this wine. It's a red Gamay from France that's meant to be served chilled. So not a common behavior. Maybe some people are drinking some natural wines chilled, but kind of a new behavior. And the launch to our direct consumer audience has been great, and then we've kind of seeded a few accounts with that. So that's really exciting. Another one we're just getting ready to launch is called Cherries and Rainbows. This is something we've been working on. It's kind of a hippie brand. It's something we've been working on for a while with one of our partners in southern France. It's a natural wine. It's organic, biodynamically farmed fruit with zero intervention. What that means is we're not really just throwing fruit in a tank and kind of letting it naturally ferment. So it's also sans soufre or no sulfur, zero sulfur wine. So we're pretty excited about that. It's natural, and those are the two launches that we have coming up this year. And then we're working on. We've got a lot of experiments happening in the winery, so we'll be crushing some Malvasia that we're making into an orange wine. We have some organic sparkling experiments, so a lot of stuff that we're really making now in harvest and planning to launch next year.
And then we, in early Q2, we closed an investment from a government backed fund out of Japan. We're going to launch a sake in early next year, and we feel like there's big opportunity. Most of the sake in the U.S. is really consumed on premise.
Sure.
And I think it's an even more challenging category for consumers to understand and buy. So we feel like there's a really unique opportunity to build a brand, really tell the story, the heritage of Japan from an American perspective, and make it easier to find sake that you love and build a brand in that category and really increase at-home consumption of sake. And we feel like, it's already a $500 million business in the U.S. We feel like we can really expand it.
Nice, that's awesome. And I had one other question come from the crowd, which is, what does a membership exactly get me?
Yeah, so when you sign up, it gets you a lot of data and personalization. So when you sign up, you fill out a quick questionnaire, which is really sort of our first date in trying to get to understand just the sort of like edges of your palate. And then we'll pick 4 wines for you that'll ship the first month. And then based on your ratings of those 4 wines, we'll continually our algorithm will continue to get better as you rate more and more wines on each product. And so the typical subscription is, or membership is 4 bottles per month at around $60 per shipment. It ranges between 58 and 62 depending on which wines get recommended to you. And then that will ship month over month when skip or cancel.
Got it. Very cool. Well, I want to thank you guys very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. I think you have a really exciting and dynamic business. It is one of our top deals, which is of all the companies we look at across the 50 plus platforms out there, they fall into that top 10% bucket. So we see a lot of potential. Like I said, $70 billion market, only begun the process, and we're excited to see where things are heading. So thank you very much. Really.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Have a wonderful day, guys. Take care. Bye now.
You too.
Take care.